Hi, I'm Rocco Stano, and welcome to Storymakers. Today, we have two Storymakers with us, Lesa, Cline, Ransome, and James Ransome. Welcome to Kidlit TV, and you've been here before, but so
Thanks a lot.
It's
Thanks
great to have both of you. And in case you don't know, James and Lesa are husband and wife, besides being Storymakers.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, and sometimes you guys work together.
Sometimes we do.
And sometimes you work alone, yes.
Yes.
And we're going to be talking about both situations today.
But it's more fun when we work together. So
Absolutely.
That's nice.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, and one of your books where you work together is Overground Railroad. So tell us about it.
So Overground Railroad is a picture book about a young girl and her parents leaving the South and heading north to New York City in the 1940s. And it's based upon kind of our own family history.
Yeah, actually, both our parents came from the South and migrated to the North.
And there's actually a term for that, right?
Yes. So they were part of the Great Migration. And we began learning about the Great Migration after we read The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. It gave us the idea to start thinking about how we could tell a version of that story for young readers. And we have our own family history of our parents and our grandparents who also migrated from the South and came north as part of the Great Migration. My parents came from Charlottesville, Virginia, and my father came from Shelby, North Carolina.
And both my parents came from a small town in North Carolina called Rich Square.
And just a quick question. So in both your families, were there family stories about the migration? Do you remember them talking about the coming north?
Absolutely. Though my mother came when she was very young. She was 5 years old when she arrived in Everett, Massachusetts. My father came when he was 12. But both of them shared with me stories about their memories in the South and comparing and contrasting kind of what it was like in the South versus what it was like in the North.
For me, my parents came after graduating from high school. So there were not a lot of stories talked about. It was just, my mother was the youngest of 9 siblings. So, and only one aunt stayed in the South. So it wasn't real traumatic, it was very common, so sort of following her siblings north just to find work.
Right.
And my father was the oldest, and his siblings came after him.
What all of our parents shared, though, was the idea that coming to the North meant a chance for better opportunity for education and for jobs, and just a freedom from oppression in the South.
Right, yeah, it's very similar to the immigrant story.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Coming to the America for a better life. But the blacks were coming north for a better life.
Absolutely,
Right?
yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so after reading this book, you wanted to share the story with young readers.
Yes.
And how did you do that?
So I did it in a way that we used the term Overground Railroad actually refers to the railway system that took so many blacks from the South to the North. It's just the train system. So certainly we've all heard of the Underground Railroad.
Right.
I've done a lot of books about the Underground Railroad with Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, that secret system that slaves used to leave the South and come north. But the Overground Railroad refers to a system that took blacks from the South to the North on the train system. And so in this book, the story is told through Ruth Ellen through train stops. So we see her leaving North Carolina, and through each train stop in the book, we see her getting closer and closer to the North. But the story is also told in a parallel, because we see also in this book the story of Frederick Douglass, and Ruth Ellen is comparing her journey to the journey of Frederick Douglass, who also left the South and came north for a better life.
Is there a section of the book that kind of encompasses what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think there is. There's a page in here that when I was doing my research, I loved reading about how so many blacks place such hope and faith in what the North would hold for them, the opportunities that the North would hold. And on this particular page, I'd like to actually show the readers this beautiful artwork by James. In this beautiful collage work here, we see that these people on their front porch waving as the train passes by, and Ruth Ellen sees these people on their front porch. But she talks about her view from the train, and she says, out the window, in between pages, I watch as crooked shacks sprout on the edges of field. Folks wave from their doorways, and I wave back. And she talks about everybody leaving for the north, talks in Bible words, Exodus, Egypt, Canaan, hoping that Chicago, Detroit, and New York City are the promised land. And so I think that that speaks to the strong tradition of the African American church and hope and faith that things will be better.
And James, Lesa just mentioned in this spread that there was, in your artwork, in this particular book, you used collage.
Yes,
Now, for our viewers that may not know what collage is, can you explain what collage is?
Sure.
As far as in art, yes.
Sure. Collage is when you take an existing piece of artwork and you put it onto another piece of artwork, or parts of another piece of artwork onto other pieces of artwork to create something new. So if we look at this carefully, I'm going to show you one of my favorite pages in the book, and that's this page here. So if you look in the window frames, you'll see in the background different collage pieces. There's patterns from different pieces of paper, and there's different types of green. So I actually have bins in my studio of different colors of paper. And so I would tear or cut these pieces of paper and then glue them down. If you look really, really carefully behind this one bird in this center frame, there's actually a little bit of a map back there as well. And so that's really a lot of fun for artists, for me, and visually for people to see these different sort of colors, texts, patterns, shapes that are put down on top of the watercolor that's painted first.
So one could say that collage is an artist's way of recycling.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I really like about it. In fact, is taking something that's been used before and reusing it. I think that's a wonderful way of conserving and recycling things. Yeah.
Right. So, I think maybe our viewers that are into art may want to try a collage.
It's especially wonderful for young people. You can collage with newspapers, magazines, and create even old drawings that you've done. It's really a fun way to make art, and it's spontaneous, it's instant. So I highly recommend, working in collage.
So, James, you're, I don't know, famous, but I know for a fact that you use real people that you know often show up in your book. So is there a real person in this book?
Absolutely. I use neighbors and friends and people I meet. This is actually a little girl I met at a school I visited. So here we have the girl, her mother and father. They all are from the Hudson Valley region where we live in New York State. And they came to my studio and they modeled for me, which basically means I take pictures of them acting out the scenes. And then they leave, and then I create the images from those pictures. I find it very interesting that when you collage, you have to really be concerned about how much of a supply you have of a certain pattern. For example, this check pattern here the mother has on, I almost ran out of that, but I made it through to the last page in the book, and so I was able to finish the book with that pattern, because sometimes I buy paper from all over and it's hard to remember where I got that pattern from, and the last thing you want to do is run out in the middle of doing a book.
And the dad's tie, is that a material that you had?
That's paper also.
Oh, really?
Actually, a neighbor gave that paper to me, and I just made it on that as well. If there was 4 more pages in the book, I don't know what I would have done.
We have 2 books that we're talking about, and we have Overground Railroad, and we have Leaving LYMON. And there's a commonality between the 2 books, and that is the Great Migration, right?
Yes, so those books are very connected because both, again, are rooted in the Great Migration. So Leaving LYMON is actually a companion book to my very first novel, which was Finding Langston. And Finding Langston began with a young boy leaving the South, again, coming to the North in Chicago post-war. And he is a young boy who discovers the Chicago Public Library. He discovers the works of Langston Hughes at a time when he's alone in the city, feeling very lost and out of place. And Lyman is one of the characters in Finding Langston who has bullied him and tormented him. And so I found that readers were contacting me wanting to know a lot more about this character, Lyman. And so Leaving Lyman was born. Lyman also is a product of the Great Migration. His family came from the South. So now we get to discover what happens to this young boy who was seen as a bully in the Langston book. And we discover, you know, are bullies made or are they born? And we discover the answer to that question in Leaving Lyman. I won't reveal the answer here, but if you read the story, you'll find out what happens. What goes into the making of a bully?
Right.
In both books, in both Finding Langston and Leaving Lyman, we find these two boys who actually have a lot in common. Both boys are very close to their fathers. Both boys are new to the city, but both boys have found a love of poetry and music that gets them through the toughest parts of their lives. And so that's what makes the beauty of art and Chicago and this period in history really resonate in both of these stories.
You know, about finding things in common, you know, you two have many, many things in common. You have children in common, you're a husband and wife, you're collaborators. But one of the things that you both have in common that our viewers may not know is that you both have been recognized by the Coretta Scott King Awards, you know, with honors.
Yes, we have, yes.
So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And thank you again for coming. It's always a great time when you visit Kidlit TV.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And remember, until next time, read a book in any format.